Just 2 months after Roosevelt took office, J.P. Morgan announces the creation of a railroad trust called Northern Securities. It was a combination of 3 railroad lines in the Northwest that covered an incredibly important part of the country.
So a trust is a monopoly. They can dictate terms, they can dictate prices, and Roosevelt felt they weren't being fair.
Mr. Morgan, I was not expecting you.
Well, you are suing me.
To be clear, sir, I am not personally suing you. It's the United States government.
If there was something you didn't like about my railroad deal, Roosevelt, you should have sent your man to see my man, and that's how it's done.
Well, that would be preferential treatment, wouldn't it?
You forget I was a friend of your father's.
My father taught me everything I know, including that every man, woman, and child deserves a fair shake.
Do you intend going after my steel company next?
Things have gotten out of hand. Law's here to restore a balance. I'm merely enforcing the law.
Spare me the lecture. All I know is you're making my life a lot harder.
Mr. Morgan, you're gonna have to play by the rules.
The case makes its way to the Supreme Court, and Roosevelt wins. It is the first time that a company as prominent as Northern Securities, a person as privileged as Morgan, has been held to account. It was really the first time that people felt like the president would not automatically take the side of business, of the capitalists, of the rich.
But still, tensions are very high. It was so clear to working class people that they were not sharing in the vast wealth being made. So they started to take action.
There was a sense that workers should be treated fairly. Unions had been growing in power. And in the first year of Roosevelt's presidency, almost 150,000 coal miners go on strike. And they're being met with silence from the owners of the coal mines.
In 1902, the coal industry was the biggest industry fueling the economy of America. The owners of the mines became rich beyond belief, but coal miners were living in poverty. There were no laws to protect against child labor. They were getting sick from black lung, being killed in astronomical numbers. So many miners wanted to change what was going on in these mines.
While Roosevelt is trying to decide what to do about the coal strike, he goes on a speaking tour in Massachusetts to campaign for his fellow Republicans.
In September of 1902, as he's driving through Pittsfield, Massachusetts, a trolley pummels into his horse-drawn carriage full speed. TR is flown about 30 to 40 feet in the air and lands face down on the ground. Everybody who's watching this assumes the president is dead.
One of his Secret Servicemen is killed. Roosevelt's bruised, his glasses are broken, and his leg is very badly damaged. He has serious surgery.
While he's sitting there recovering from the carriage accident, the need for some sort of solution to the coal strike is becoming really urgent. The weather's beginning to get cold, and there's no coal that's been stored up for homes. Hospitals and schools are closing down. There are riots in the streets, commandeering coal carts. There's real panic in the air. But there was no precedent for a president getting involved in a strike of this magnitude. No constitutional right to do so. He was told by his advisors, if you get involved and you fail, as you are likely to fail, then the responsibility will be yours. But he could not sit on the sidelines.
Roosevelt has to do something. And so he decides in early October to do what no president has done before, which is to say, look, rational people can come to rational agreements. So I'm going to bring in the union representatives to the White House and the coal mine owners to the White House, and we're going to hash it out.
In that room, you have John Mitchell, president of the United Mine Workers, speaking for the union. Mitchell started work in the mines himself at around 10 years old. Then you have George Bear, president of the Reading Railroad, speaking for the industry. Bear actually said that God had appointed him and people like him to determine the destination of our country, and unions were unnecessary.
When Roosevelt started the meeting, he said, "Is it all right if I have a stenographer take notes?" And they all said yes.
Well, the way I see it, there are three main parties involved. The operators, the miners, and the public. And I'm on the side of the public, so let's come to an agreement for the sake of the country.
Sir, the union would abide by a presidential commission to decide what's fair. We want to work.
No commission is needed to get these mines running.
We've got 20,000 honest workers glad to work for what we pay, but they're intimidated by him and his lot.
Our union only wants fair wages and fair hours, nothing more.
If you want the mines to run, you must arrest those that are responsible for the intimidation and murder.
My men have been pushed to their limits, and they've made some mistakes, but they're not murderers.
Let them rot in prison where they belong.
It's your company police who start the trouble.
I will not listen to your lies.
Gentlemen.
Mr. President, I've told you my position. It's up to them.
We will never accept a proposal with the union at the table.
Never. You must.
We will not let our business be dictated by a mob. I would have thought a man of your breeding would have known that. You've wasted our time.
Time is running out, Mr. President. I try to do the right thing.
Well, now I know what we're up against. Did you get all that? Good.
The meeting ends in terrible failure, and Roosevelt's very disappointed. However, he reads the notes, and he realized that the attitude of the coal barons was obstinate, and the attitude of the union guy was willing to come forth to some sort of solution, that if he made it public, then there'd be a demand for action. So he sends the transcript to the government printing office, turning the Steto's notes into a pamphlet, which is then ready by midnight to give to the press the next morning so that it can be in all their newspapers. And it changes the public mood. Now they felt much more sympathy for the strikers. They felt angry at the arrogance on the part of the coal operators.
Coal and iron police private guards came to the scene, and essentially it was kind of a melee of rock and stone throwing, shots fired.
Guards shot another striker in Shenandoah last night. Killed him.
America needs its coal.
We've received letters from 100 mayors. They need help.
We've got to end the strike.
Yes, but how do we do that?
Well, I've spoken to many mine owners myself. They suggest military action.
Military action?
Yeah, you order the army to disband the strikers, and then you get the non-union miners who want to work in. The union will fold.
Call in the army.
Can we do that?
Yes, bring in the army. But not to disband the strikers. If the owners want to negotiate, then we'll just use the army to take control and run the mines ourselves. That'll bring it back to the table.
That's not what I meant.
And I'm not sure that's legal. We can't simply interfere with private property like that.
I have been reading John's biography of Lincoln. Now, there are times where he suspended the law to get results, right?
But Mr. President, those were different times. We can't just...
We were at war.
So are we.
Lincoln really was, for TR, a hero. And in the biggest crisis of his own presidency, the coal strike, Roosevelt somehow managed to read this multi-volume work by Nicolay and Hay on Abraham Lincoln, and he took solace from the notion that there were times when Lincoln had to break precedent, where he had to act without the law being on his side, and it was necessary because he had to be a steward of the people. And so Roosevelt decides, I'm going to send troops in to take over the mines and operate them on behalf of the people. I think he can say to himself, Lincoln would do this if he needed to.
Lincoln did what it took to save the Union, including at times strain the Constitution to a breaking point. That was Roosevelt's philosophy. It's important to have a Constitution, but he always said the Constitution is not as important as the people.
A lot of his negotiations involve a threat that's either implied or specifically stated. And in this case, he specifically stated it. He said, if you all don't agree, well, then maybe the federal government's going to have to nationalize the mines and force the workers back as federal employees.
But before he put those plans in motion, he knew he had one other option, and that was to turn to John Pierpont Morgan, the man who he was fighting in the courts, but also the only man, really, who had any influence over the coal mine owners.
In Pennsylvania, the Reading Railroad owned the mines, and guess who owned the Reading Railroad? J.P. Morgan. So he had the authority to help settle the strike.
Morgan was starting to understand that there could be unrest, that there could be disorder, that there could be chaos, and that would be bad for business and bad for the country. So Roosevelt sent Elihu Root to New York, and on board Morgan's yacht, they drafted an agreement that created an independent commission to mediate a settlement to the strike.
The owners agree to it, the union agrees to it. They come to a settlement that settles both sides, and the coal strike comes to an end. The hospitals open again, the schools are open, people have warmth for the winter, and the country loves it. They love the idea that their president has intervened on behalf of the people, and he's a hero.